Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. As Mark left the bistro that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that this strange, contract marriage was only the beginning of something much bigger. But what? Mark walked back into the bistro the next day, his heart pounding in his chest. The rain had subsided, but the weight of Eleanor's offer still hung heavy in the air. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was his only chance to change everything. He had spent the night thinking it over, weighing the consequences, but nothing else seemed to offer a way out. As he stepped through the door, he saw Eleanor sitting at the same table, her posture as composed as ever. She didn't look up when he approached, but the slight shift in her eyes told him she was aware of his presence. Without a word, he sat down across from her. Eleanor placed her cup of tea down with a deliberate calmness, waiting for him to speak. End scene. The next morning, Mark stood in front of a sleek, polished desk at Eleanor's private office, feeling every bit the outsider in this unfamiliar world. The room was as cold and pristine as Eleanor herself. Everything about it screamed power: modern art on the walls, marble floors that gleamed even in the soft light of the early morning, and a massive view of the city skyline that made Mark feel smaller than ever. Eleanor sat behind the desk, reviewing papers with an air of authority that was impossible to ignore. The dinner that evening would be the first of many, but Mark couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing inside him. As the days passed, he would have to learn how to navigate this strange, new life. And maybe, just maybe, he'd begin to understand Eleanor more than he expected. End scene. The days that followed felt like a blur to Mark. The mansion became his new reality, the quiet halls and grand spaces both a blessing and a reminder of his situation. He had been living here for only a few days, but already, the coldness of it all was beginning to settle into his bones. Eleanor had been kind enough to provide everything he needed: clothes, food, even a private driver to take him wherever he needed. But none of it felt like home. The emptiness of the mansion reflected his feelings perfectly. He wasn't here for comfort or companionship. He was here for the contract. Eleanor's rules were clear. Public appearances, no personal involvement, no intimacy beyond the marriage vows. It was a transaction, not a relationship. But even with those boundaries in place, Mark found himself thinking about her more than he should. As Eleanor turned and walked away, Mark stood there, a wave of uncertainty washing over him. What was going to happen next? Would he be able to maintain the facade, or was something deeper beginning to stir inside him, something that he had no control over? Only time would tell. End scene. The evening of the gala arrived faster than Mark had anticipated. He stood in front of the mirror in his room, adjusting his suit, the crisp fabric of his black tuxedo feeling foreign against his skin. He had never worn anything like this in his life, and for a moment, he wondered how he had ended up here. Just days ago, he was struggling to make ends meet, barely scraping by, and now he was about to attend a lavish event as the fake husband of a woman whose world seemed so far beyond his reach. His reflection stared back at him, a man who didn't belong in this world. But he had made a choice, and this was the life he was now part of, whether he liked it or not. End scene. The days following the gala felt like a turning point for Mark. He had expected to feel more detached from Eleanor, to keep his emotions in check and focus solely on the arrangement they had made. But something about that night, her quiet words of approval, the rare moment of softness, had stuck with him. Despite the clear boundaries they had set, he couldn't help but wonder if she was slowly letting him in. But he couldn't let himself dwell on it. This was a business deal, nothing more. Eleanor had made that clear from the beginning. He had to remind himself of that, especially as the days became more routine. As he left her in the quiet of the room, Mark couldn't help but feel that something was changing, even if he wasn't sure what it was yet. And though he didn't know what the future held, one thing was certain: his life had already changed in ways he couldn't yet understand. End scene. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings, events, and public appearances. Mark had settled into his role as Eleanor's husband, the perfect picture of the dutiful, silent partner. He had grown used to the routine, attending galas, sitting by her side during business dinners, smiling for the cameras, and posing as a loving couple. But the more he played his part, the more he began to question what was real and what was just part of the charade. The line between the role he was playing and the man he truly was started to blur. And despite himself, despite everything he had promised, he found himself wondering if Eleanor might be feeling the same way. As Mark stood there, staring after her, he couldn't help but wonder if they were both trapped in this arrangement, unable to break free from the roles they had agreed to play. Was there a way out? Or were they both destined to live in this world of illusion forever? He didn't have the answers. But one thing was clear: things were starting to shift. And whether he was ready for it or not, their lives were about to change in ways neither of them could have predicted. End scene. The days after their conversation felt different. Mark couldn't shake the weight of what he had said. He had hoped for something, a shift, some kind of understanding between them. But it seemed that Eleanor had returned to her usual self, distant and impenetrable. She kept to her routine public events, business meetings, always the picture of control. And yet, there was a tension in the air. Mark had no idea how to break through the walls that separated them, and he was beginning to wonder if he ever could. End scene. The days that followed their conversation were filled with a new kind of tension. It was as if a weight had been lifted from their shoulders, but the uncertainty of what came next hung over them like a storm cloud. Eleanor and Mark no longer kept up the facade as tightly. They spoke more honestly, though carefully, as if still testing the waters of what this unexpected connection could be. The walls between them, while not gone, had cracked, and Mark found himself thinking more and more about what they could become, not just as business partners, but something more. End scene.